The two most popular people at any dinner party are going to be the doctors and the computer nerds. Because if you're either one of those people, folks are going to come up to you and go, oh, doctor, I have this pain right here. Or if you're a computer nerd, someone's going to come up and go, I've got this problem with my hard drive. So we always get a line of people, so we're so popular. It's great. One of the big things I hear is, how do I speed up my computer? And the answer is, well, do you actually know your computer is running slow? A lot of times people miss that perception. So what we do when you first install and set up a computer, we go through what's known as performance baselining. The performance baseline just kind of gives you an idea of how well does your computer run before you add all those Steam account games and all the big heavy applications and everything that slogs the computer down. So the tool we use to do this is called Performance Monitor. Let me show you how he works. Performance Monitor is a very old tool, but particularly with Windows 10, it works beautifully. Now, before we get into Performance Monitor, there's two things you need to understand. Number one, we have to decide how we're going to run this. There's a real-time mode where you can just look and you'll get a graph. In fact, it starts by default. You can see it already running. And then we can actually store information and we can run it over 24 hours or over the weekend or something like that. And it allows us to get an idea that over time, what's happening with the computer. So I want to start off with just running it real time. So take a look at the screen here and you're going to see that by default it has what we call a counter already installed, which is percentage of processor time. And this is being traced over time, so you can tell how early in the morning Mike Myers shoots videos right there. But what I want to do is make sure you understand there are thousands of built-in counters that check so much of your system, it's absolutely unreal. Anything going on with your hard drive, anything going on with your network, anything going on with your CPU, anything going on with RAM, software, all kinds of stuff. And what I want us to do right now is we're going to start adding some counters to this real-time graph. So to add counters, you just click on this green cross. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that if you have access to other computers on the network, you can actually do this to other computers, but we're going to stay with the local computer right now. So for example, what I want is already under processor, this is just a heading, and underneath this are all kinds of important counters. So processor time is, in fact, it's already loaded. I'm not going to load it again, but if I wanted to put processor time on that list, I could do it right there. I could do it as a percent of user time. Now, when I say user time is individual users, how heavy are they using something, I could do that here. And there's a number of these that I don't even know what they are, and that's okay. Another really important set of counters is under logical disks. And this is actually, when they say logical disks, they're talking about individual volumes. So I can come in and I can say, is somebody reading on a particular disk really, really hard? So here I can pick individual volumes I'm interested in. So I'm going to say, I'm worried that my C drive is getting written on really hard, so I'm going to add this particular counter. And you can even do stuff like with memory. So how many available, oh, I don't know, let's do megabytes. So what I've done is I've added two different counters, and if I hit OK, you can see that these counters are going to begin to show up. Now, one of the things, I never like these colors. Let's change a color here. Let's turn that blue. So I'm not doing a lot of exciting activity here, so let's get heavy load running one more time. Start that. Let me minimize all this. In fact, let's just bring this forward. So now you can see that I've put some actual load on it. You can see that my computer is starting to log all of this type of information. The A+ exam is not going to ask you what counters do what. That's not going to happen. What they are going to expect you to know is that if you want to create a baseline, you will use Performance Monitor and you will select certain counters. In fact, most of us don't even select counters unless we have a very specific issue like, okay, for some reason, when I walk away over the weekend, I come back and my computer's locked up. So I'm going to put CPU load and memory usage up, and I'm just going to leave it running, and then I want to be able to come back and see what it looked like when I come back on Monday. The problem is if we do that, we're not going to be able to use a real-time tool like this. We're going to have to store it in a log file, and Performance Monitor does a great job with this. If you want to track stuff over time, you need to use data collector sets. A data collector set is nothing more than a pile of individual counters that you put together for your own needs. So let's go ahead and make a user-defined collector set. So I'm going to say new data collector set, and I'm going to call it Timmy. Now I can create it from a template, which they recommend, or I can create it manually, and I just want to put one little counter in here, so I'm going to do it manually. Now the next thing it's going to say is, do you really want me to make logs? Yes, that's why I'm here. So I want you to make a log of whatever performance counters I choose. Event trace data is another aspect outside of this where I could actually say if a certain thing takes place, like if I hit 80% of CPU usage, just that. And system configuration information is often used just because I want to keep track what was the system setup when I did this particular one. So we're going to go ahead and just leave it like it is. Let's hit next. Now here's where I add my performance counters. So in this particular case, I'm going to add processor again. Now what's interesting here, do you see where it says processor and I hit total right here? And you'll see there's an asterisk. What's basically saying is every single one of these counters that are listed underneath him will be, let's get to the right spot. So all of these counters, you'll see that asterisk, that means take them all. Some people like that. I just find that it makes a lot of mess. So let me remove that, and let's just pick a particular one. So we're just going to pick processor time, and we're going to hit add. I've got what I want. Let's go ahead and hit next. Or you can actually change the interval. You want it to check more often? Let's say every 5 seconds. It's going to make a bigger log file, but it'll give me more information. And then I say, where do I want it to be saved? By default, it's going to be c:\windows/perflogs/admin/Timmy. I'm going to be fun. Let's just throw it on my desktop. We hit next. And here I can say, who do I want it to run as? For example, I'm a local administrator, but if I wanted to change that, I could log in as somebody else. Generally, I like to leave it as this. And I'm just going to save and close. Ta-da! I've now made Timmy. So if we want to run Timmy, just right-click on it and start it. What's happening now is every 5 seconds, he's logging the processor time. That's it. And he's going to keep doing this for as long as I want. Now, there's a couple of things with logs. And number one, we usually use what are called cyclic logs. And basically that means if my log file gets bigger than 10 megabytes or whatever, just start writing over the old stuff. It is hilarious, but it can happen. I've seen it happen more than once. I've done it too, where you start making log files like this and you completely fill your C drive because you didn't think to turn it off and it made a lot of data. So that's why we have these limits where in terms of size, and we can also make them cyclic. So I'm going to go ahead and let him run, and let's stop him. Okay, so Timmy is now stopped. Well, that's great, but I want to see it. Can I see what I did? Easy. If you make a data collector set, it will then automatically generate a report. Ta-da! So we can actually now see the results of our performance baseline. Not too exciting, but it worked out well. Now, the other problem people run into, they're like, well, Mike, I don't know what kind of counters to use. First of all, there's acres of documentation on this, but if you just want to go in cold, all you need to do is come over to data collector sets, and you'll see system here. It has preset diagnostics where you're trying to check problems, and then system performance. The system performance covers a lot of counters. Look at all these asterisks. Yipe. This is going to make a pretty big file, but it's checking the CPU, it's checking the actual physical hard drive, checking the memory, overview of system, anything that's serving, your network cards, your internet stuff. So it does a pretty good job by itself. Notice the sample interval is every 1 second. This is going to make a big file if I let it run, but you know what? I'm a glutton for punishment. And by default, you can see where he's loading all of these files. This is going to make an extremely large performance baseline. Personally, I find these a little onerous because they're so big, but just to give you a sense of what they look like, we'll go ahead and turn that off. And we come down to System. I did System Performance. There he is. And you actually get a result. Now, there are tables in there, but we had so many counters in there that it had to actually separate them into something that looks a lot like Performance Monitor. The bottom line is that if you need long-term information about how your system's running, the Performance Monitor is the best tool you've ever seen. He will do an amazing job. The biggest trick to Performance Monitor, more than anything else, is getting used to counters. There are tens of thousands of websites out there where Windows nerds get together and they say, what are the best counters to determine if I'm having a slow internet connection? Or what are the best counters if I install Adobe that I need to be watching? Take your time, do a little research, but remember, it all starts in Performance Monitor.